We are live now, sir.
Okay. Shall I start?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So we were doing this in the earlier lecture, this problem of one-dimensional potentials, which we are going to continue in the next lecture also. But I had finished up to, I had come up to this point. So let's do this final problem on which is a prototype of a scattering problem. So rectangle potential barrier. This is now, the shape is this way, and is again non-negative. It can't be negative because the least value of this is 0. And here E less than potential energy at infinity does not arise because E cannot be less than 0. E has to be greater than 0 and V infinity is 0. So this problem admits only of scattering state. It does not admit of bound state at all. For bound state, E has to be less than 0, but that is not allowed because the minimum value of V is 0. So it will not admit of a bound state. And classically, if E is less than V naught, that is the height of the barrier, then there is a total reflection of the incoming wave, say coming from left, and for E greater than V naught, there will be total transmission. That's the class. That would be the thing expected classically, because by the usual argument, inside, you can't go inside the barrier, because in classical physics, you track the trajectory of the particle. So nowhere would be, and the trajectory can be potential energy be negative. I'm sorry, can be kinetic energy be negative. So that's why you just can't go inside that for E less than V naught. And E greater than V naught, there is nothing to stop. It has to, it will be fully transmitted. But quantum mechanics gives a dramatically different answer. Both reflection and transmission occur in general for either case, except for some special values of energy where transmission takes place and so on. And unlike a bound state now, we have said this before, whenever there is a bound state problem, your goal is to find eigenvalues. Now here E is going to be continuous. So here the main task of the problem is to find the amounts of scattering, the transmission and reflection coefficients. Physically, for x less than 0, we expect this solution to be coming of combination of something coming to the right and then reflected and then transmitted in the other region for x greater than 0. So in the exterior region, the wave equation is without any potential. Once again, the same solutions. But this time we will write it in the form of e to the power I k instead of sin k, because this combined with a time dependent term e to the power looks like a traveling wave to the right, and this one is traveling wave to the left, and this is a transmitted wave to the right. So these are the exterior solutions, just the same equation, potential 0. In the interior region, once again the same strategies. You find out whether the term is positive here. You take 2 and E and bring it on to the side. For E less than V, not what will happen, you will get plus beta square or whatever coefficient I have defined. I have defined alpha. So alpha is 2m by alpha square E minus Vc, because E is greater than Vc. This is the full transmission, classical case, full transmission. We are doing that case first. So you get this solution. I have told you to be just alert to the fact whether you are getting a plus dtu by dx square plus some positive quantity or minus. If it is a plus thing, you will get e to the power I alpha something. If it is minus, you will get just pure e to the power alpha x or e to the power minus x. So that you have to be always alert to that. Now continuity conditions, again at x equal give 4 condition, we can use 2 of them to express f and g in terms of a and b. So there are actually 5 coefficients, a, b, c, and there are 4 things. So 2 conditions you can use to eliminate f and g. And therefore, then we will be left with 2 independent relations. You see, there are 4 relations, and 4 relations which will contain f and g. So in 2 equations, so f and g you eliminate from that in terms of a and b, then you will be left with 2 independent relations, because there are 4 in 2 equations. There are f and g. You substitute, you eliminate them, and you get the ratios of these coefficients b by a, etc. This is a long exercise, and it's left you to do this. It's pure algebra, nothing else, just algebra. So reflection coefficients is BA mod square is defined to be the reflection coefficient, CA mod square is defined to be this. And you find physically that, you know, either it has to be reflected or transmitted. So you find those expressions are, and for E tending to V naught, there's some term, you don't bother. And one interesting thing, CA mod square is 1 when alpha is equal to n pi. That follows from this equation. If alpha is n pi, then this quantity becomes 0, and then CA square is 1. That's just an interesting observation. There is nothing much more to it. So these are the reflection and transmission coefficients for E greater than V naught. E less than V naught, as I told you, you have to be alert to that the exterior region is the same, there is no problem. It's the same equation. Interior region, now you have to be alert to that dtu by dx square, is it plus or minus? So in this case, it will come out to be minus, because now V naught is greater than V naught. So you can see that yourself. It will come out to be minus beta square. dtu by dx square minus beta square. When you have a minus sign, then you have without iota, beta x, and so exponentially damping solutions, etc. Of course, this is an interior region, so I can't drop. When it was an exterior regions in some other example, for the square well, I could drop 1 because it was blowing up at infinity and so on. But here it is an interior region, so both will have to be remain, because it is the region, there is no x infinity or x minus infinity. It's only within the minus 0 to a. So both solutions have to be admitted. So as before, use continuity conditions UDA at x equal to 0. And the most important non-classical feature is that the transmission coefficient for this case, which classical physics doesn't allow any transmission. There is a finite transmission, and it is this. And this phenomena is called tunneling, which is a completely quantum mechanical phenomenon. Tunneling will not be allowed in classical. You can, as if you are tunneling, the particle is tunneling through the potential barrier. And under certain approximations, we have a very simple formula. All this is just pure algebra, long algebra, and left to yourself. Even from this to this, you will have to write sine hyperbolic beta a. I hope you know that it's e to the power beta a minus e to the power minus beta a upon 2, etc. You have to take the squares and take these limits. So it will give you good practice in algebra. It is not even calculus, it's algebra. So a finite probability exists for the particle for E less than, and this is called, and for E let, what happens, what if V naught is less than 0? Then it becomes nothing but, what happens if V naught is less than 0? That means it's a problem where this gets reflected here. What will be this problem? Can I have an answer to the chat? In the chat, if this is reflected and potential is this, as my arrow is, as my cursor is showing, what do the chat answers say? What kind of will it be?
So there is one answer in YouTube. It says potential well.
Absolutely correct. It's just the same problem that we did this early this afternoon. The only difference is there we had made sure to make it symmetric. So it was -a to a. Here we are saying 0 to a because for the barrier problem we did not do. We could have done even for the barrier problem. Uh, so except for the fact that it is, so it will not give you either even or odd functions if you just do this because it is not an even function. But otherwise, physically, it's the same problem as square wave. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can always shift the origin of a potential and it doesn't change the physics of the problem, but the particular expressions might change. So that is what it is. So it's a correct answer. So that, and in that, as you said, square wave, there is bound state solutions, also scattering solutions. We are not doing scattering theory, so I'm not going to do that. And so that is all. And that is about the barriers. So this once again, this lecture was based on the earlier lectures, and almost all the slides I have taken from lecture 4 presentation by Andresh Sundar. And the reference basically is Schiff and Griffiths and the usual thing, and my usual acknowledgement to the help of from my friends Dhaval Dalvi and Andresh Mazumdar. So thank you, and if you want to have any one or a few minutes for raising questions, please do.
So one response, it's not actually a question. It says energy can be negative then.
See, if you are talking, I don't know, if you are talking of total energy, of course it can be negative because total energy is T plus V. And we have seen so many times that V to V, you can add anything you like. You can add -500 to, you have defined some E, you can put -5. No physics will ever change. So energy can of course be negative depending on what potential, what zero of potential you have taken. For example, Coulomb potential is -Z square by R. So it is at infinity V is 0. So of course V is negative for attractive Coulomb potential. For hydrogen atom, V is negative. And V is sometimes that negative is more than the positive. T is always positive classically, and quantum mechanics, T expectation value is positive. So therefore, E can of course be negative.
No, sorry, I think there's a misunderstanding. This was in response to the question that you asked when V goes to -V0, what will be the case? In response to that, it was said that energy can be negative.
So in response to which question, that if you have a square wave?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. E, no, but the answer, yeah, E can be negative, and the negative thing will give you bound state. Of course, E cannot be negative, less negative than even V0, which has now become negative. E will have to be between the lowest negative value of potential and 0 for this well I'm talking. But E can be still greater than 0. We did not do that problem, but E can be positive also. That will be a scattering problem. Okay. Anything else?
So one question was there from the last session, and it says that for the barrier in finite potential well, where we get the exponential solutions, there the particle is exponentially decaying inside the barrier. Can the penetration of the particle inside the barrier be observed experimentally?
I think, well, I don't think wave functions as such are observed. Wave function, their effects are observed. So, for example, the fact that in our potential barrier, there was some wave going out of the, on the right side, despite E less than V0, the so-called tunneling. That can be observed, of course, because you can detect the particles, etc. Wave functions by themselves, their effects can be observed. I mean, you develop theory for but this is like hydrogen atom. You can ask, does hydrogen atom also has regions where classically the electron with that particular energy will not be allowed, but it is allowed. Now, have people experimentally verified it? I am not sure if people experimentally verify wave functions by doing some measurements. But the effect of that hydrogen atom wave function on another hydrogen, so for example, a hydrogen molecule, so it will be a combination of these wave functions, and then whether it remains bound or it is an unbound orbital, etc. So in general, my answer is that there are no direct verifications of wave functions, but the effects of, unless wave function is coming to, unless a particle is coming to infinity, and because these are micro, in practice, the quantum levels, I mean, these quantum states, when we said it is outside these barrier widths, etc., are extremely microscopic things that we are talking of. And then somebody putting a detector at that microscopic thing, to me, looks like an unlikely thing. But it's a very good question. Just give me time. Maybe I'll look up some books today and see if there are, because in modern experiment, just about anything they have been able to do what earlier was not feasible. So just give me time. I'll think about it. It's a very good question, whether experimentally the actual, and don't use the word decaying. Decaying, I mean, you can say decay is of a particle. You should say attenuating or decreasing function, because decay gives an example as if the particle is decaying. So anyway, that's a meaning. I know what you mean, decaying means. But what you are asking is in a square, let's say a finite square, well, we got e to the power minus beta x, the exponentially decreasing function. Has somebody observed that there is a probability? It's a very good question. Unfortunately, I do not know any experiments of direct observation of this. But give me some time, maybe in a day or so, I will look up references and do it. Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
There are no more questions at this point.
So I now go to the next thing, which was actually a continuation of this only. It's just the same theme, but because of time, we made it another lecture. So now I stop share. This share screen again, and then I go to Are you able to see the screen, new screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so everything fine for the slides, etc. And yeah, so I'll begin with the new next lecture, that is about the linear harmonic oscillator. As I said, it's the same theme. It's the same thing. You have a potential, an extremely important potential, model potential of physics. So I'll make some remarks at the end about this. So once again, solving independent Schrodinger equation, finding energy eigenvalues. It's technically a little more difficult. The last lecture, I would say, was rather algebraically rather simple. It does not need much maths. This needs a little more maths, that is all. So this is the harmonic oscillator potential. Everybody knows this. A parabolic potential. Least value is this. This is our usual first line. You should always write. And sometimes books won't write that. Least value you should first write. Be clear what energy cannot be. So E has to be non-negative. It can't be negative. E can be zero or we find out E can't be even zero, but that's a different matter. And any finite E will be less than V infinity. So harmonic bound oscillator admits only a bound state solution. There is nothing like scattering solutions to the harmonic oscillator. You have the Schrodinger equation now with the potential half kx squared. Now, this problem, it doesn't have any regions where you have discontinuities, continuities. It's a continuous thing. Where will we apply the acceptability conditions. So acceptability conditions here will have to be, of course, whatever solution of this is a differential equation. It's a differential equation for any A. And once again, to repeat, what is our goal? To find out those U's which are physically acceptable, and we'll find physically acceptable U's will exist only for some discrete values of E. Will not be continuous. For any E, the U will not be accepted, but there are some values of E for which U is accepted. So this result, how do we obtain? So I want to preface all this by saying that differential equation solution is different from ordinary algebraic equation. There's always a clear-cut method for solving simultaneous equations, or at least up to quadratic equation, or even cubic. There are clear-cut routes, and you find out. But differential equations, you have to try methods. Now this is a second order differential equation, linear, of course, linear, homogeneous, second order differential. For such equations in mathematics, in many cases, there is a method called method of power series, which is not guaranteed that it will work, but often works. So we are going to apply that method. And now we'll use partly some expectation and partly, mathematics to go ahead in the problem. So one thing is that we said bound state solution, and now we have been told that U will always go to 0 at large infinity. We have experienced that. It will be a surprise in this case if it doesn't happen. So how does a function, how would this function go to infinity? It is bound to go like exponential, go to 0 at x equal to infinity. Usually functions go like exponential, but it is at both ends it should go to 0. So it will be something like e to the power minus x square most probably. But now remember the point. So involves some x-dependent exponent, which must be. The important point is exponential of something, that something has to be dimensionless. So this point, please, it's a very important takeaway for this entire course, that functions, sine, cosine, exponential, logarithm, in physics, whenever you are talking of their arguments, those arguments will have to be always dimensionless. Otherwise, it will be wrong, something wrong, somewhere you have made a mistake. Because these can be expanded in power series. If it has a length dimension, then you will have a series which says meter plus meter square plus meter cube. Won't make sense. So it has to be dimensionless. So exponent has to be dimensional. So there will have to be some constant in the problem, such that xi equal to some constant, which we don't know what. Right? We can choose it. Basically, we can choose some suitable alpha, such that which has a dimension of inverse length, and then convert this equation in this dimensionless variable. So then you will be a little comfortable that it will be e to the power minus xi square or some constant times xi square. So we introduce, this is a usual trick to solve that. First, introduce dimension variables which you expect in exponents. Then you convert this equation. This is a very simple method, almost trivial method. Just a change of variable with a constant. Just put x will be xi by alpha, etc. X square will be xi square by alpha square. Cancel off things where they can get cancelled and so on. And you will get this equation. Guys. I leave it to you, these intermediates are absolutely simple. So you get this. What do you think will be the dimension of this? Can somebody tell me what will be the dimension of this? If xi is dimensionless, can somebody tell me what will be the dimension of this? The one I am circling, and this total thing, 2m. Please write in the chat, what do you expect this to be the dimension of? This circle including E, and this circle, xi is anyway dimensionless, so whether we include it or not. Any answer in the chat?
No, so far.
Please think. dimension of every term in the equation should have the same dimension.
Okay, somebody says dimensionless.
Yeah, very good. That's the correct answer. Just tell me what is the dimension of D2U? If U has some dimension, what is the dimension of D2U? Let's have the answer in the chat. If U has some dimension, what is the dimension of D2U?
So no dimension to the last question.
No. Yeah, I'm asking D2U. What is the dimension? If U has some dimension, let's say 1 upon square root L, what will be the dimension? Whatever be the dimension. Call it.
So some people say same as U,
Yeah.
and some people say length to the power -2.
No, I'm not asking. Yeah, I'm asking. Yeah, length to the power -2. Excellent. So what I mean is D2U has the same dimension as U, because what is D2U? D2 is du is difference of U, and D2 means difference of difference, you know, manner of speaking. So it has the same dimension of U. So if it is the same dimension, this quantity has the dimension of U. This already has U. This is dimensionless. So what will this be? It will have to be dimensionless. And similarly, it already has a dimension of U. And this must match. This has the dimension of U. So therefore, this must be dimensionless. So please always check. These are very simple points. And however, we sometimes are not alert to them. So choose alpha to make the dimensionless coefficient in second term unity. So alpha, of course, is not dimensionless. Alpha is the dimension of inverse x. Now, alpha is not given to me by anybody, so why not make life simple? Just make it this way. So it is imperative, it is absolutely will come out. I don't have to check it, but you can check it yourself. That mk by h bar square has the same dimension as alpha 4, and alpha is inverse length dimension. Please check it yourself. So it will be dimensionless coefficient. And so why not make this coefficient 1? So you make it coefficient. So you have this. So then this becomes minus I square. And now just for elegance, just call it one constant, y call it 2, and all this stuff. So you substitute what you have chosen for alpha, you get something, just that whole constant, just call it lambda. It will be a dimensionless quantity of, again, but you call it this. So, and it is dimensionless, as you can see, E upon H cross omega, so it is dimensionless as expected. So this is only for the fact that we introduced dimensionless variable was for for certain reason. These are only matters of little conveniences and so on. Otherwise, so you have a nice simple equation lambda minus I square. So this is just the same equation as earlier. There is no difference except for change of variables and making it convenient. So this is a second order differential equation, homogeneous equation, solution undetermined to within a constant, and we now try power series solution with this. Now, usually this power series solution, first you have to extract out the factors. I mean, exponential factor is not a power series. So usual technique is to extract out as far as possible the asymptotic factors. And then for the remaining thing, you solve the differential. That's a usual trick which works. If you ask me the question, how do you know this happened? The answer is the guy who did first for the first time was a very clever guy. That's all. There's no more answer. Mathematicians, you know, in mathematics, there are a large number of examples. So we develop a feel of what might work and so on. But differential equation has no clear-cut recipe what will work. So one finds that this xi to the power n, where n is a number, this quantity you can prove is an asymptotic solution. What does one mean? Something is an asymptotic solution. Asymptotic always in physics means either some limit, generally plus infinity, it could be the other way also. Xi plus minus infinity limits, they are called asymptotic. That means you can neglect terms which are and leading term is of the order of xi square. What does it mean that the leading term is xi n plus 2 this thing? What about this lambda u? Lambda u will not be leading because u is xi to the power n. When xi is tending to infinity, this fellow u xi to the power n will be much less than xi to the power n plus 2. Here, similarly, you take derivative of this. It's a simple product of coefficients. And actually, if you want to make life simple, you can even drop this xi to the power n. You can just try e to the power plus minus half. If you want to make life simple, you just forget about xi to the power. E to the power plus minus xi square also is as good. Then xi square e to the power this will be more leading than lambda. And that factor and dtu by dz square will have many factors, some with xi, some with xi square, etc. You will find the leading order of the terms xi square you will cancel. To check this, you take xi to the power n, but if you are finding that difficult, just drop xi to the power n and check this just for e to the power plus minus. You will understand the meaning of the term leading order of the term, and they will cancel out. When the leading terms cancel in a asymptotic solution, we say it is a solution. Do not think that this will just satisfy this equation. Don't think so. If it satisfies, then what is the problem? It will be the solution of it. No, it will satisfy only the leading terms in xi tending to infinity terms will cancel out. So it is that is the meaning of asymptotic solution. Now, this suggests, well, if xi to the power n is working asymptotically, but not exactly. Maybe if I put instead of xi to the power n at xi, maybe it will work. And of course, plus half xi square I have to throw out because it's going up at infinity. So I will take e to the power minus half xi square. So mathematically, even this would work, but it's not just mathematics. I have to have acceptable u. So I will take this and hope that u at xi is good enough so that u is acceptable. So this is what is known as a starting ansatz. I mean, starting sort of a guess that, well, let's try this. It's called ansatz, A-N-S-A. I don't know how it is pronounced, but I pronounce it as ansatz. So substituting, we get an equation for exact. So it is just a change of variable. Now everything is exact. I am putting this, I put exactly now, and there's no question of approximating or anything like that. It's just a change of dependent variable from u to h. Substitute this. Earlier we changed independent variable to make it dimensionless. Now we change dependent variable. So u goes to h by this factor. So do the standard differentiation, etc. You will get this equation for x. Then now we solve this method by the method of power series. How many of you have done method of power series? Let's see the answer.
Somebody says yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes, there are many yes.
There are many yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see a no so far.
Wait, in what context have you done? Can you write in what context? In what situation? In what problem?
So Frobenius method of solution, hydrogen atom.
Oh,
or in mathematical physics problems.
Very good, very good. So you have encountered Frobenius is just a name for that method of power series. Yeah, you have encountered you have done in mathematical methods and you have done in, so I'm sure by MSc first year, this method comes across.
With special functions, yeah.
Yeah, in special functions, very good. So I think I can take the liberty to be very, very, very fast and not concentrate on the maths. Xi to the power s, we say it's an indicial, there is this index s, and then you have a power series. It's not just power series because we don't know. I mean, whether it's a power series, the first, if it's just a power series, it has to be starting with some power, but it might be some something else. So we start with I to the power S, and then you have A naught plus. Now, why? Yeah, S greater than 0. I have already said that it should be finite at I equal to 0, because I equal to 0 is a region of interest, in physical interest, origin. So you can't let it blow up. Why do you say A naught not 0? Can you say why A naught not 0? Why can't A naught? Why can't A naught be 0? Yeah. No, always when mathematicians write it, they will write A naught not. So what's the point?
It's the first coefficient.
Yeah. In fact,
The
the point is, supposing A naught you put 0, then it will start with xi to the power s plus 1. So why not take xi instead of xi s plus 1, and then A1 will become. So whatever is the first non-zero coefficient, that you call A naught, and that residual power you write as xi s. So that is okay.
Yes, the others say that it should have the leading term. Yeah.
So I think the answers are correct. They know it.
Yeah.
So you substitute this equation, substitute it here. It's very simple. Just write A naught xi to the power A naught xi to the power s plus 1, A to the power xi s plus 2. Just differentiate twice. Here you differentiate once, multiply by xi. You can anticipate that this will reduce powers of each by 2. This will reduce power by 1, but then xi is increasing the power, etc. You just do it all yourself and equate the coefficients of each power. You will get this. Now this I can't possibly do. It's long but absolutely straightforward. It's a straightforward exercise of mathematics, and you get this equation. But please do it yourself. You expect straightforward. Doing it once is very, very important. Once in a lifetime, one must do this 1 by 1, 0, 1, A2, A3, do as much. And then you should be able to see what is the generalization. So then if you put, for example, nu equal to 0, then this will be 2, and this should, so you should be able to generalize it either, or you should go to the power nuth and then equate the coefficients, whichever way you prefer. You should check that when nu is 2, for example, then when nu is 0, for example, this will be A2, and this will be S plus 2, S plus 1, which is what this is, 2S plus 1 minus 1. So that's how you should do this. Now, having done this, we get the so-called initial equations, S minus this, and the recurrence relation. What was this giving? This is giving a recurrence relation, but missing one step, and nu plus 2. That's the equation. So we get this and the recurrence relation. This equation gives me S equal to 0 or S. Why? Because A naught was not 0. This one was S equal to 0. A1 may or may not be 0. If S is 1, A1 will be 0. So if you just gather together these cases, these are the cases. And so you have this thing. So now we have 3 cases, S equal to 0, A1 not equal to 0. You have this. Other case is S equal to 0, A1 is 0. So the odd terms are vanished. The other one is S equal to 1, A1 equal to 0. So these are even terms and these are odd terms. And this has both. Now you can check yourself that actually this is nothing but the even terms of this, and this is nothing but the odd terms of this. For that, you have to make sure that the coefficients are the same as here. You have to make sure. So please make sure that the ratios of coefficients are the same everywhere. So what does it mean? The solution 1 is just a linear combination of these solutions. So what's the point in keeping solution 1? It's giving it nothing different from the combination of this. So the 2 linearly independent solutions are of this. That means as they say, there is no loss of generality, which means we are not specializing, we are losing nothing by putting A1 equal to 0, because provided we take both cases, we are reproducing this solution also. So there is no loss of generality. That's the word. No loss of generality. So terms with the case 2, terms with odd powers, case 2. So only the later, and there is no loss of generality taking this. So the two linearly independent solutions are this, with successive coefficient s equal to 0, and the other one equal to 0 with successive coefficient this. And you know what the ratios are. Now, but it is a power series. Where is, I mean, what is happening to this power series? And A is even and B is odd. To investigate the convergence of these, so far it is infinite. Just write down the ratio of success. It's called comparison test in infinite series. If you have done mathematical methods, it's called. And for large nu, forget about s, etc. They are small numbers. If you take large nu, just forget s plus 2, s plus 1. It is actually 2 nu by nu square. Forget all of the coefficients, because nu is arbitrarily large, and you get this. And this ratio is the same thing as the ratio of this. Please do yourself, exponential of e to the power xi square is 1 plus xi square plus xi 4 to the power 2 factorial, etc. etc. You write that down and take these powers. You will find it has the same ratio asymptotic. No, not in the finite, asymptotically. For large, and it has the same ratio. Thus, asymptotically, u xi is it is not equal to, it is going like e to the power xi square, which is e to the power xi square, which is unacceptable, which is ruled out. This means we can't let this happen. The only way out of this difficulty is that the power series terminates. When power series terminates, it becomes a polynomial. Now, polynomial, even if xi tending to, polynomial is of course going to infinity, or xi tending to infinity, a polynomial. But polynomial has much less power than this exponential. So this is going down exponentially, and this is a polynomial which is in xi. You can prove in mathematics that a polynomial with e to the power minus the limit of this function is fine. It will be 0. U of xi tending to infinity will be 0, provided it is a polynomial. If you don't let it, if you keep the power series on, then it will go like this, and it's unacceptable. So that is where the acceptability, physical acceptability of the wave function comes in. Okay, so that's why you have power series must terminate, should be an infinite series. Please note this is a mathematical result that xi tending to infinity, this quantity will go to 0. Polynomial, this polynomial is going to infinity, this is going to 0, infinity into 0. This particular case, it goes to 0. Okay. The condition of termination of the series puts a condition on lambda. So, yeah, how will it go to infinity? You want to terminate, means at some place nu, this a nu plus 2 should be 0. So what should be lambda? Lambda should be for that particular nu lambda. So lambda should be equal to 2s plus nu, whichever place you want to terminate. So it depends on where you terminate. Lambda depends on the value you terminate, and s where nu is even, and s can be 0 or 1. So that is the point. So define n as equal to this, so lambda will be equal to n. And what can be n? For s equal to 0, n is even, and for s equal to 0, what do you get? S plus nu is n, and nu is lambda is 2n plus 1, and s equal to n. Because why am I saying nu is even? Why nu is even? Because a1 is equal to 0. So a1 equal to 0, a3, I mean, in the cases we are considering, we are having only even terms, even A0, A2, A4, but it was getting multiplied by either xi to the 0 or xi to the power 1. I hope you follow the point. Just see again. You see this? These are even things. But in one case, it is being multiplied by xi. That is why it is odd. And here it is xi to the power 0, it is 1. Because s was 0 and s is 1. And this a1 equal to 0, we have put it. So that's why nu is even. So nu is even if s is equal to 0, n is even if s is equal to 1, n is odd. So we have covered n is anything, all the integers. So lambda is 2n plus 1, 0. If you take both the solutions, you have this. And lambda was 2e by, so you get half of lambda first. And lambda turns out to be 2n plus 1. So just substitute. And you get this very famous formula for quantization of harmonic oscillator energies. So this is the solution of energy eigenvalue problem. One of the most, important examples of quantization in quantum mechanics. Quantization of a linear harmonic oscillator. And this formula is extremely famous. You should always remember, even if you don't remember all the details of how it was arrived at. N plus half h cross. The 0 point energy is half h cross omega, and energies go in steps of 1. So they are equispaced. So it will be half h cross omega, 3 by 2 h cross omega, 5 by 2 h cross omega. The energy difference is constant between successive levels. So it's called equispaced. What are the corresponding eigenfunctions? That is a tough job because you have to substitute these in this equation. Earlier it was lambda. Let's see what was the earlier equation for. Let's see what was the earlier equation. Right in the beginning. Yeah. So you now put lambda equal to 2n plus 1. So it will become just 2n. When it becomes 2n, this is a famous Hermite polynomial equation. Why is it called polynomial? Because lambda equal to lambda minus 1 equal to 2n, then the solution is a polynomial. Otherwise, it was a power series. Why is it called Hermite polynomial equation? Equation for Hermite polynomials only when lambda minus 1 is 2n. So the solutions then are polynomials, they are called Hermite polynomials. So you have this Hermite polynomial. Now we are assured that this is going to give you polynomial solutions depending on the value of n, whatever, starting from n equal to 0. So you will get, and Hn has n zeros. And it is, remember, n is from 0 to 1. So if you take n equal to 4, it is a fifth state, isn't it? N equal to 0 is a starting state. N equal to 4 will be fifth state. And any polynomial of degree n has n degrees. So n plus 1th energy eigenfunction has n nodes, similar to other examples. Okay. Explicit form, of course, what this explicit form is all given in mathematical physics book. No point in our giving it here because it will be just some expression which is of no consequence. Here, I mean, you have to go through that properly. And there in mathematical physics, you must have learned that these special functions, these polynomials there are generating functions which give you as coefficients, their polynomials and so on. So all that you have to do, that's just mathematics of Hermite polynomials. And using the generating function method, you can determine the normalization constant. It will need a lot of good mathematics. It's all given extremely well in Schiff, but if there is any other book you want, you can use that, and it will give you very good practice with good maths, etc. But we have no time for doing that. So that is the explicit form. I'm not giving it here. Then Nn can be determined. So You please look at some books to know the initial function. I must tell you that the simplest I will tell you what will be at zero. What do you think is at zero? At zero will be some constant. At zero is constant. So what is the ground state solution? Yeah, tell me what will be the ground state solution on the chat. I'm telling you at zero is constant. Anything on the chat?
No, so far.
See, at zero is constant.
Gaussian.
Full solution is hn into e to the power. Don't forget that e to the power minus I square. In the total solution was u is equal to hn into e to the power minus I square. If h0 is constant, then u0 will be e to the power minus I square. So the ground state of harmonic oscillator, its energy is half h cross omega, will be a Gaussian. So very simple result, because the ground state of a harmonic oscillator will be a Gaussian, and it will go outside the harmonic oscillator. It will penetrate outside region. It won't be remaining. A Gaussian is not constrained, it just goes all the way up to infinity. Of course, decaying on either sides. So it will go away, and you have the ground state. What do you think is the first state? H1. Guess what might be the H1 that? You know, it's a polynomial of degree 1. So what's a polynomial of degree 1 in Xi? And remember, polynomial of degree 1 can be Xi, some constant Xi plus 1. Why Xi plus some constant will not be good? Tell me. I'm guessing H1 Xi is some constant into Xi plus some other constant. Tell me why this guess is wrong. Any answers?
No, sir.
I'm guessing. I have to, of course, look up a book for exact factor, but
So,
because
sir, somebody says it
Yeah.
will shift the center. Sorry for interrupting. Yeah, somebody says it will shift the center.
No, for this given this problem, I'm talking of this given problem. Why H1 Xi will not be? For this given problem, solution is Hn Xi into e to the power minus I square. Why H1 Xi cannot be? I mean, I'm just guessing. H1 Xi is a mathematical function, and it's meaningless to say why it can't be, but I'm just estimating what H1 Xi might be. And my answer after a little reflection is it can't be at Xi plus constant. It will have to be Xi into something. Actually, it is just Xi, but into something. The reason is, don't forget that it is either odd or even. The polynomials, one solution is odd and the other solution is even. So it will have to be either. So Xi plus constant will neither odd nor even. Xi is odd, and Xi square only will be even. So for Xi, if it's H2 Xi, then Xi square to Xi square, I might add a constant. In that case, it will be even. It will remain even. So please remember that even odd property of Hn Xi, and that is why H1 Xi will have to be Xi. H2 Xi may be Xi square and a constant, but not Xi, etc. So these little fields one must develop even if one doesn't know all the results, for which one has to consult the tables for polynomials, etc. Anyway, so final some remarks. For the linear harmonic oscillator, quantization of energy arises from the physical requirement of acceptability. So here you see it is not u du by dx. Are they continuous? I mean, u du by dx. What about them? They have to be continuous, are they? Yes or no? U and du by dx.
Yes, sir. So many people are saying yes.
Yeah, because it's a polynomial, decent polynomial multiplied by a very decent function e to the power minus I square. So obviously it will be all continuous, etc. So that condition was not explicitly needed. What was needed was that u should be acceptable at infinity, a bound state. you should not blow up. So that is the acceptability condition that was needed. And energy eigen spectrum is discrete, non-degenerate, and it also was non-degenerate. There was not, for one solution, for one energy, there was only one solution. See, En, then Hn. We did not need two indices to specify the rate. So it's non-degenerate. And it is either an odd because Vx, if we shift it, the student is right. If we shift the potential to something, it will not remain, and then this nice, elegant property that function is either or will be destroyed. No problem. It's physically, there's no problem. But it will not be either or. In the ground state, energy is not zero, as expected physically from the uncertainty. Because so the least energy is half h cross omega. This is the reason is, you could do it as an uncertainty problem, that what might be the least value. You localize the harmonic oscillator delta x, then you find the delta p, and you should be able to find that the ground state energy is of the order of half h cross, even from uncertainty. It can't be x equal to 0 and p equal to 0 definite. Then it will violate the uncertainty. So that is the reason, that's the physical reason why it is not 0, but we have arrived at it mathematically. So linear oscillator problem has great importance here. Just my final remarks and I'll stop. It has great importance for several reasons. It provides a convenient, complete set of functions which may be used for any one-dimensional bound state. This is that thing, completeness, which I said in physics, we take it for granted coming from mathematics, that these operators called Hermitian operators, they give you energy eigenfunctions, eigenfunctions which form a complete set. So we can make use of this property quite a lot for any other problem also. And you can model a linear diatomic molecule by this potential. It will not obviously be a realistic model, but for low energy excitations, it is fine, because after all, linear diatomic molecules can be ionized. So it's not that if you stretch, its potential energy goes on increasing. Whereas in a linear oscillator, you simply can't, you can't ionize a diatomic molecule. So at some distance, the model potential will not be proper for linear, but for reasonably small energy excitation, the harmonic oscillator will be a good approximation for the vibrational energy states of a linear diatom, and all that has been experimentally seen. So it is these things, coming back to the question that people ask, now how do you know the wave function is actually going outside? It's not that way, but based on this theory, you get energies and they match what you see in diatomic molecular spectra. The low energy excitations, vibrational spectra are equispaced and differing by h cross omega, from which you can get the frequency and so on. So there is a whole consistency of quantum mechanics with atomic and molecular physics, which gives us confidence into all these wave functions, etc., which are not directly measurable, and so on. The model can be improved by adding n harmonic terms. You can add half kx cube or a kx4, etc. So then you can improve model. The results are easily generalized for three-dimensional oscillator. If it is an isotropic oscillator, the energies will be degenerate except for the ground state. So actually, for three-dimensional case, identical thing for each dimension. So the result you can expect, it will be half h cross omega nx plus ny plus nz, or n1 plus n2 plus n3. Half h cross 2 instead of n, it will be three quantum numbers. And since there are three quantum numbers, there are some, there are many triplets of three quantum number whose sum may be the same. Like it may be 1, 2, 2 or 2, 1, 2. The sum is 5, but it will give rise to different wave functions. So that's why degeneracy will come in higher dimension. Now, final point, there is a formal resemblance between linear oscillator and modes of a quantum field, or even modes of a classical field. And if you want to quantize a field, this enables us to take the results obtained here to quantum field theory also. It's because of these things, Dirac made use of this great analogy and did the first quantization of electromagnetic radiation, that this problem is kind of almost a central problem of quantum mechanics, the linear oscillator problem, because it is not just restricted to one-dimensional quantum mechanics. It is enormously useful in various other domains, besides being useful in molecular physics, particularly in more advanced domains of physics like quantum field theory, etc., in which it's not that there is a linear oscillator really oscillating something, but mathematically there is an analogy between the linear oscillator and the what are known as the modes of a field. The vibrational, modes of a field also have and they satisfy harmonic oscillator like equations. So because of that, it has great importance. And we are going to do this problem once again by a different approach, which was adopted by Dirac. This one is the Schrödinger approach. The one we'll do in lecture 10 is the Dirac-based approach. And it is that approach that Dirac used for these more advanced domains. That's all I have to say. Again, these are the references. Again, I have taken the slides from the earlier version. It's all Schiff. Schiff is my primary reference, but this is such an important problem. It is there in every book, and you can use any book you like. Yes, my friends, I must acknowledge again.
Thank you, sir. It was a beautiful lecture, and yeah, so we don't have many questions. Just one question came. What is the difference between harmonic and anharmonic oscillator?
Harmonic oscillator is half kx square. Force is proportional to just displacement. We have learned from our school days. Force proportional to displacement, simple harmonic, pendulum, etc. So that is harmonic oscillator. Anharmonic means there are additional terms. Half kx square plus bx cube plus cx4. So those are called anharmonic. Then the results are not so simple. It's not even solvable exactly. You will have to solve them approximately. Only, you see, one of the reasons why linear harmonic oscillator, these problems are so much used, because they are exactly solvable. Linear harmonic oscillator is an exactly solvable problem of quantum mechanics. But this good luck is not there for every potential. You add some terms and the problem will quickly get out of your hand. And you will either have to do numerical analysis, or you have to use things called approximation techniques, which are also a very important part of quantum mechanics, so-called perturbation theory. Unfortunately, in our limited course, we will not be able to do perturbation theory.
Sir, one related question is there a physical example for anharmonic oscillator?
Yes, diatomic molecule. You see, you can see physically, he's talking anharmonic. Anharmonic.
Yes.
See, diatomic molecule potential, you can physically see how can it be linear oscillator for all the distances. If it were so, then you would never be able to take the two atoms apart. But there is a thing called dissociation energy, if you have done molecular physics. See, if some two atoms get bound to a molecule, if you push them hard enough, supply enough energy, then they get apart. But if they were described by a pure linear harmonic, they will never get apart, no matter how much. So it's very unrealistic. So only for small energies, around the equilibrium. See, around the equilibrium, almost every potential energy is harmonic. That's another point you should know. Why? Because if V is minimum, what is the meaning of V? And Vx around the minimum, what will it be by Taylor series? Tell me V of x, supposing x equal to 0 is the minimum of the potential. And it is not harmonic oscillator. It's something else. And it is going to give rise to some bound state, let's say. So if V is 0 at, let's say, x equal to 0 for convenience, what will be Vx close to x? You have done in mathematics this. You have done what is known as Maclaurin series or Taylor series, etc. Okay, so Vx will be V of 0 plus x into V, the first derivative of x at that point, 0, plus second derivative, plus x square into second derivative. Now, at a point of minimum, what is the first derivative? Yes, I think people should answer the question. What is the first derivative at a point of minimum?
So 0.
0.
Yes.
So is it not obvious that in Taylor series, apart from the first value V of 0, which you just put at 0, you start from the potential, from your scale starts from that potential. So the first non-vanishing term is the coefficient V double prime, that is derivative of V, which is a number at x equal to 0. It's a number, and what is the function? X squared. So every potential around a minimum is actually a harmonic oscillator for a small range. Why for a small range? Because Taylor series doesn't stop at x squared. It goes on and on and on. So there will be additional term x cube, x4, etc. But if you restrict to small region around the equilibrium, it is harmonic oscillator potential. That's another great importance of harmonic oscillator potential. That no matter what the potential is around, a little around the minimum, it's always harmonic oscillator. So same thing for diatomic molecule around the equilibrium position where V is minimum. A little around, if you displace it, little around, the vibrations will be simple harmonic. If you displace it too much, then obviously it will not be harmonic, it will be anharmonic. And in fact, at certain point, even anharmonic will not do. The potential will be just 0, but at very large distances, the molecule will dissociate. So there will be nothing to hold it. So not even anharmonic. So there are standard potential curves you can see in any book on quantum mechanics or atomic molecular physics. The diatomic potential, which around the equilibrium is like harmonic oscillator, but it becomes different. They are called Morse potential, if you have heard of it, and so
on. Sir, there was one more question.
Yeah.
So, if the damped system and forced harmonic oscillator system can be called as a harmonic system?
This is a very good question, but I don't mind what you're saying. Of course, a damped harmonic oscillator is not a harmonic oscillator, but in a damped harmonic oscillator we can do the physics, the quantum physics of a damped harmonic oscillator. However, that will be, it will not be a stationary wave function. It will decay, There will be an extra decaying factor.
Actually, she modifies the question a little bit. She says, if this damped system or forced system can be treated as an anharmonic system. So
no. The two matters are different.
Okay.
Damping is the wave function will decay. And forced thing will be, you will have to put the atom in a, forced oscillator problem is a very standard problem in quantum mechanics. What you do is, so what she's asking is very much done in quantum mechanics. You put damping terms and then a charged oscillator, and then some incident electromagnetic field is incident on it, etc. And then damping is because of the radiation. The oscillator is radiating. It's just a more complicated problem, but it's a very good problem. It's a very good question. So, but it has nothing to, whether it is harmonic or not harmonic, anharmonic, that depends on what potential it is under. You can always put, well, under forced oscillator case at damping, not only a damping term, but also a perturbation, an enharmonic perturbation. You can always term it. I mean, nobody prevents you from making things more difficult. I mean, you can always add additional complicated terms. So, but quantum mechanics will still hold good in every case. Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
so there is a probably related question. If there was dissipation in the system,
There
what
was what?
can we do? If
There are-
there were dissipation,
Then
I-
these simple conservative theories that we are doing will not be true. There are theories for that. You know, system is friction and so on. This kind of thing, what we are doing is only for conservative system. Actually, some kind of damping will have to be necessary, otherwise a forced oscillator, actually the amplitude becomes infinite. So some damping is necessary, whether in classical or quantum case. But these simple theories won't work here. The answer to this question, most of these things are done perturbatively. Most of the problems are done perturbatively. So when you have you solve this stationary problems like we did, and then you use perturbation theory, either time independent or time dependent. And what that external force will do is to oscillate like a laser incident on an atom. This is an example of a forced oscillator problem. Very close to forced oscillator problem. So it will there will be oscillation in the problem. But any realistic thing, this oscillation will damp out. So you put a damping term. You might put an enharmonic term, no harm in that.
okay, sir. I mean, we don't have any more questions now. So,
For these later questions, the very good books will be books which deal with quantum theory of atoms and radiation. Interaction of radiation without quantizing the radiation. This is called semi-classical theory. So a laser interacting with atoms. So read up any laser book and you will get answers to many questions that you are asking.
okay, so if there are no more questions, then probably we should thank Professor Kumar. And I mean, yes, the students, you are most welcome to post your questions. The room will be open for some more time.
Kulahal, I think we have way past the time.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I
Close the
was just
time.
saying
We have to
that
close the room
probably
very
we would, okay,
soon because the next session has to start now.
right. Okay, yeah.
So shall I